our tone really impacts how we talk to people. And so I think if you're picking up the phone and you're sounding like you're trying to get through your your 10 beats for that day or whatever the case is, or that you're trying to make a sale because you're desperate, like all of that coming back to Ryan's emotions will come through in our voice. And so I think really just making sure that you're feeling calm and confident and just having that tone, I think really makes a difference.
Even great leaders get stuck. Others thrive. I'm Mark Cook, New York Times bestselling author, president of Windfall Partners. We get leaders unstuck and thriving with their teams. Clients upgrade leaders' retreats and conferences with my 5-star keynotes and breakouts on leaders' bold encounters. Also, leaders get weekly consulting as they execute key steps. Plus, brief check-ins guarantee results, live or via Zoom. After turnarounds as chief executive and 9 global studies of 2 million award-winning leaders. I've coached 4,000 client wins at top brands with my approach in over 50 cities worldwide. My Bold Encounters is an advanced system for leading. First, powerful steps on a path forward. Second, problem-solving skills that beat obstacles fast. Leaders create revenue breakthroughs, and clients see new profits. Now let's lead with Bold Encounters today. Welcome to my guests. I am thrilled to have extraordinary guests. I have Lisa Morozoff, which is a great talent in the San Francisco area. She is the principal of the San Francisco office for Mercer, and she works with some very high-tech companies and some of the largest corporations in the world that every household knows. And I also have Ryan Wiersdorf of the O.C. Tanner Company, and he is not only an award-winning top salesperson from the past in his company and fighting this year to make it again, but he has actually just recently won a more interesting award. He's won a contest among the entire sales force for C-suite pitches, which I love. I love that idea. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks, Mark.
You bet. I wanted to start today's conversation setting it up. The salesperson in us, none of our roles have the word sales in them, but because we're in business and we're trying to reach out to more clients and we have a responsibility to do so, we're always creating new relationships each week. It's interesting, the research shows, including mine and many other people, I think we all recognize that in business, no matter whether you're in a cube far away from any customer interaction, or you're the CEO that doesn't have really any sales direct responsibility today, you have to have new relationships in your life. Talk to me, each of you, about the importance of just the most fundamental start of beginning new relationships and how important that is in work and life. Maybe, Lisa, you could give me your thoughts about that first, and then Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an extrovert, so I love to meet new people because I thrive on their energy. But, as you build your network, it is so important for you to get to know people and not just what they do, but who they are and their background and where those connections can lead you further on. But yes, I thrive on meeting new people, and I think it's really important to doing the business that I do.
What are your thoughts, Ryan?
Well, as I think about the value of live meetings, right, as opposed to maybe asynchronous communication that we all use and things like that, I think it comes down to, for me, to two things, right? Bandwidth is one of those. The bandwidth of being able to exchange data just escalates when we're able to meet live. You can see my hands moving, and that's communicating something. You can hear the words that I'm saying and the intonation, everything else, and that's communicating a message as well. And so I think just being able to have a larger bandwidth by nature of meeting in person is really, really valuable and important to moving, a business relationship forward. I think the other piece that is really important to these types of things, right, where we're in person, we're talking, is emotion. And despite a lot of certain people's best efforts to whittle emotion out of the sales process, it's still there and it's live and well. I think, emotion is triggered by interactions, by being able to talk with someone or listen to someone or ask, specific questions and things like that. And that can only be done in some type of live setting, whether that's virtually or in person or otherwise.
Yeah, I love that last comment about emotion. Some of us think about emotion as something negative sometimes, whether it's some mental illness or something like that. But what you're saying is just the general word emotion. We all have emotions. We have an initial visceral response that's biologic, and then we get to think of things. And if we continue to think past that response, it's a feeling. And people love to push those out and say, we're just going to decide on facts and figures, but they don't recognize there's been some pretty impressive investigation on this. People that you may have heard of, like Harvard, Daniel Kahneman, who won a Nobel Prize, saying emotion is part of decision-making, especially complex decision-making. It's pretty foolish to think that spreadsheets and facts are going to win the day at this point. We're a little beyond that. Let me ask you one other follow-up to your thoughts, Ryan.
Sure.
Why more people? What if you're not in sales? It's obvious you get more commission, you make the trip, things like that. But talk to my leaders and talk to my tech leaders. Like, why more people in business life? You've been in a different job than sales. I met you when you were in a different role. So why more?
And more meaning more in person.
More people. Why get to know more people if you're in a normal business or leadership role?
Right. Well, Mark, you did some great research a number of years ago when you were at OC Tanner and really digging into what it takes to create great work. And one of those things I remember was kind of going outside of your inner circle, the people that you talk to the most, right? Your core group, and being able to go beyond that group. And I think some of that research really showed the impact that it can have on your ability to deliver great work when you're getting input from people 2 or 3 levels beyond your comfort zone, right? The people that you're generally working with. So I think, and that would be for anybody, not just somebody in sales, but an executive, anyone working on a project, anyone who's trying to innovate and do something new is going to benefit from meeting people that maybe they wouldn't normally rub shoulders with and they can learn from.
Yeah, I know that, Lisa, every day you are designing custom best practice health benefits for clients. But you've probably also been a normal employee at some point, and you're a person like everyone else, just in normal world. Why more relationships in life outside of sales?
Well, I think we're all just regular employees at the end of the day, aren't we? But no, I find that you get a lot of diversity in thought. So in my line of work, when I'm consulting or meeting new people, that coming back to what Ryan said around the value is when I get to meet more people and talk to more people, I understand the landscape so much more, and understanding also the way that my thinking is not only like 100% the right thinking, but getting that diversity of thought and hearing different perspectives, hearing how other people approach different or tackle different problems within their organizations, I think actually gives me more information to work with. So just a couple of thoughts from me.
Great thoughts. Okay, let's move beyond the purpose of why we want to meet more people and how it's ideal, and focus back on what Ryan is saying a little bit. He mentioned something very important. The live meeting to start a relationship. So today's world has us thinking the relationship is on Instagram and seeing pictures via email and a sequence of emails or what have you electronically. Tell me a little bit about your thoughts on that first meeting in person, or at least their live voice or face over Zoom, just a live meeting. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, what I discovered during the pandemic is reaching out to people. First, I was just reaching out to people in my network of, hey, how are you doing? And some people would get back to you, some people would not. But then even trying to move that conversation into a call was much more challenging. I think that a lot of people, particularly during the pandemic, they were slammed with so much volume of email and so much more work. So I found that the capacity really went away. So it's not like you can just schedule a meeting and you're conducting regular business. You really had to be very thoughtful and creative on how you restructured those relationships and your approach. But I do find that now that I'm getting back in front of employer groups and talking to people, it's just so much more meaningful. Ryan, you talked about reading body language and really understanding the emotion. Are they chewing on something? Are they distracted by their dog barking in the background? Like it's really hard to read that on Zoom or in a phone call, but when you're there live in a person, I think you can get a lot more of their attention span and really be able to have them open up. So, if you're talking to them on LinkedIn or even through a phone call, you may not be able to get like deeper conversation and get to that depth that you can in an in-person meeting.
That was a terrific answer. Ryan, I know that you've already covered that, so push you past a little bit on this. One of the great things, I'm just going to give the people that deserve the credit. There's a one word that I've run into in multiple episodes on my show and also in work life that has really described what we're talking about at the front end. And the one word by HubSpot that came out, I think it's their word. They say you have to attract a first live conversation. And so the spamming and the repetition and trying to force people to respond is not nearly as effective as what you were starting to get us to. I don't want to go there quite yet, but to have such value to attract, there's a reason the other person wants to have a live phone call, a live Zoom, or a live lunch or meeting. And so what are your thoughts on attracting, besides just the generic value word? How do you offer value? And what is that in real life?
Well, first off, it's getting harder and harder, right? Getting that live in-person meeting is just getting more and more difficult because there's so much out there. People that are interested in a topic can find a wealth of information out there online at a click that will help them to get what they need. So I think it comes down to kind of personalizing, making sure that any kind of value, if you use that word, that we're providing is extremely focused on that individual, on their organization, on their role, on their interests, and being prescriptive with it as well. And I think all of us have value that we bring to the table. And that's why we are in the roles that we're in. And being able to share prescriptively, upfront, some value to those people that is very personalized, very on point, is really key to gaining that interest or attracting that first meeting.
Yeah, well said. In my last episode, that it may not be sequential, but the last one that I put up, my guest Amy Rahovchek redefined value for me, and I love the word she used. She said, "Value is progress," and I thought about that. I think that's super wise. And then if you add some synonym of improvement, whatever that is, level up, turbocharge, whatever you want, innovate. If you progress and raise the bar, that's for someone else, that's value. They're going to gain value. And rather than just value that we business people understand and use a lot, I thought that was really wise. What are some of your thoughts on the literal, practical version of value to just get people to start talking to you, Lisa? Not once you get them talking. We know what you can do there. Your organization is amazing and have amazing products. But before that, as you're trying to get them to talk to you, what does the value look like to you, Lisa?
Well, I'd go back to what Ryan said. I mean, in my line of work, it's so niche. Like what I do, I'm really talking about what's happening from a socioeconomic political standpoint in the US. And usually any of those triggers can spawn a conversation. COVID can get people opening up, talking about their personal experience, how it impacted them at home or in the workplace, and how I can triage that into talking about some of the solutions that our firm does. Even the Black Lives Matter protests, that opened up of taking a look at how we structure benefit programs, whether it's that one size doesn't fit all anymore, and how do you segment your population to really dissect those needs that, that if you are right out of college versus someone at the end of their career, there are two different value propositions within the organization. And how do you serve those? So even the Supreme Court ruling on abortion, that opened up a lot of conversations. And So, I mean, I'm fortunate in that I can literally just pick off something that's going on in the broader world, and I can bring that back to how we can solve or solution that for that particular person's organization. So I feel like I have it a little bit easier, and that I can get people talking about some of these big, things happening out in their environment really easily.
Yeah, those big companies have a lot at stake, and they're crossing a lot of state and international borders. And so they know what the latest best practices on a given topic. I also love, you probably would never position it this way, but I love what you're saying. And it makes me think of the shorthand version, maybe current events. And while current events isn't by itself enough to attract a new person that could be your new colleague, your new friend into a conversation, it certainly has half of what we're talking about. And I think, Ryan, what you're saying, the personal nature, you said a magic word, you said their role. And I think that we used to in sales love the data that some of these, back in the day, D&B would provide us, like the company that they work for is interested in these things. And we kind of go right to that, assuming that some senior vice president actually cares about the details of the investor call or something. And really what that person cares about is their job. They have to do that day, that week, that quarter, and that nut they have to hit that year, or that they have what they have to accomplish that year. They're very intensely focused on what they personally have to do. You take, some of the things that I require the clients that I work with to do before they make any first calls. I call them my 4 Ps. They have to figure out the personal priority meaning a work related priority. They have to figure out the personal, which is the personal event, could be I'm into raising the bar for female leadership, or it could be suffering children in India, whatever it is, the personal for that person. And then you also have to figure out the other people, which we're about to get to, the other people that are in their lives, so that they have a trust and that you can surround them socially before you even approach them. And those 3 things tee up for you a purpose to even approach them, to have a live conversation. And I love what you said, Lisa, like if you take those things and you layer on top of it a current event, and with those things, it would ensure that it would be a meaningful current event. It's not the latest findings on what really happened to Michael Jackson. It's like something you need to know for your job, and it just happened. So I love the combination of all of our ideas. That's a good stew. Okay, let's talk about one other issue related to this before we get to the actual referral activity. I found great advice from one of my colleagues, and he was a subject of some of my selling years ago. And he reached out to me and he instructed me, look, if you're going to ask me to help you sell someone else, you better come to me with something teed up, simple, easy, and super valuable for the person that I'm going to introduce you to. And if you don't have it teed up, so it's almost no work for me, super valuable for them, just don't call. And I thought for days about that after. I'm like, wow, that's a high bar. And so I've been thinking about that since, which is where some of this has come from. And I think one of the great singular ideas there, it's not always the answer, but it's a question, a super smart question. Having done all the research of current events, my 4 Ps, the personal role that you mentioned, Ryan, if someone has that from LinkedIn and social media and online bios and such before they even arrive at somewhere they might bump into the person or the person's friend, they're ready to have a singular, simple, brief conversation. So a smart question is one of the ways to describe be prepared, be ready. Now that's my version. Tell me your thoughts, Lisa, about preparing before you ever approach anyone to introduce you to a friend's friend or a colleague's colleague. What do you think about preparing and some of the things?
Well, as I mentioned, I need to be up to date on what is happening in the macro environment, because then that makes me conversant on really top of mind issues. Another thing our company does is we do a lot of surveying of employer groups. And so just being able to understand what those market trends are, having those in my back pocket that when I'm talking to someone to be able to pull that out. So for me, preparation is really understanding what is the macro environment, what are those trends, and to your point, what is interesting or valuable to my particular audience.
To that person, even. Yeah. What kind of preparation do you demand of yourself when you do it right? I know we all kind of try to do things right and slip a little bit sometimes out of expediency. But Ryan, when you do it right, what are some of the things you demand of yourself to prepare?
Well, when I think about asking for a referral, for me, it comes down largely to the relationship that I have with the person that I'm going to be asking that referral from. And so I'll spend a lot of time making sure that I've got the right person. I've got someone, and the bar that I set for it is this person someone I'm comfortable enough, I know well enough that I would pick up the phone right now and ask them for a favor, for a referral or whatever. And if they don't hit that, then I might second guess reaching out to them. So I try to start with people that I know well enough that I think would take my call and that I would feel comfortable reaching out. So that's the first step for me, is just to make sure I've got the right person. And from there, I try to be very straightforward with them. This is the reason I'm calling. Notice you're connected with so-and-so, and I really would love to talk with them, and just being upfront about my reasons for connecting with them and asking for that referral.
Yeah, that's great. To me, that translates as maybe some data analysis on your own contact list, like the priorities, the priorities that exist within that. And I found tremendous luck. It's a lot of work, so I don't recommend it for all. I rarely recommend this, but to the people that are ambitious and forward thinking in business, it is very valuable to go through your contacts and categorize them as friends and colleagues. The colleagues that come from a work source introduction, even if you're dear friends, you're going to lunch all the time. If you got to meet them because of a work thing, it's good to call it a colleague because it lets you talk to them differently, sometimes in mass. And then if they're a friend, like it was a personal introduction through your life, that's a friend. And then you segment out those, you do it by an intensity of the emotional relationship. And so then you can rank the intensity of your relationship, the closeness of your relationship. For me, a friend one is someone I'm very close to. And a colleague one is someone that I could call a confidant if I wanted. They're so close, but they're close to me, even though I originally met them in a work environment. So I have friends ones and colleagues ones, and I'm close to both of those. And then I escalate it to twos that I'm pretty close to, and threes that I really need a connection to be with someone else. And the fours are really just basically strangers that have ended up there somehow. And you can even segment out based on the industries or the occupation of the person. It's a ton of work. It takes months to do even the first shot of something like this. So I'm not recommending it for everyone. But if you're game, it's an extraordinary mental exercise to reacquaint yourself with the people that you actually know, because you already know the people you need to be successful. But the new ones add on top of it this layer that combines all those ideas and those neurons that are already available. And it's a miraculous thing when you connect all those. So I love what you're saying about that. Now, if we approach someone who's not quite, I have people in my clients that say, I don't even approach people I'm close to at all, or clients, which is a little extreme to never ask someone who said you've done tremendous things for them to introduce you to someone they know. I mean, that's in a very extreme, isolating view I don't personally subscribe to. And so I try to gently push them out of that a bit. And one of the ways that I try to push them out of that is to realize that, and maybe this is cheating because I'm a researcher and I've done a lot of research at every executive position I've taken, I've required that I get to do some market research of some sort. And so I'm very comfortable feeling like I need to know more. I don't know everything. So I find myself at a client or in a role, and I need to know more about that industry, about that person, about their work, about the goals, vision of the company. I need to know more. And once you can accept that you need to know more in work life, in business, then all of a sudden it's a very natural thing to say, if I need to ask someone to get more information and knowledge about something, that can be the purpose for the call. I don't need to say I'm going to sell them. I don't need to say that we're going to try to do business together or partner. If it's someone that's not quite close to me, I have become comfortable reaching out to the friends too and the colleagues too and saying, look, Jerry, he works in X industry, and I have an important question I need to ask someone in that industry. Is he approachable? I don't ask for an introduction or a lunch or any favors. I tee it up like my friend told me to. I just say, is he approachable? And all I need is a response. And then I can say, do you mind if I tell him you said so? And usually they say more and are more enthusiastic and even offer an introduction. But even if they don't, I've got what I need. I can go to that friend and I can say, I need to know more. It's for this project or this client or someone similar to your industry. 5 minutes, 15 minutes. Can you give me some opinions and some thinking? Now, I know both of you have different situations, and I'd like to hear, your Ryan. It might be easier in your situation. And Lisa, that approach might be more difficult in yours. And I'd like to hear just some honesty about that. Let's start with the bad news first. Lisa, tell me about how to be careful about that and your thinking about such an approach.
An approach being to your personal context?
Yeah, just whoever is close to you, how to be careful and what might backfire in anything I've said.
Well, I would go back to the preparing question. I think first and foremost, I think we all were driving at it, but didn't state it specifically, is around research. I mean, for me, I would want to know more about their business. Like if I'm getting a contact or I'm after a contact, then I've done some research around what it is that their business is doing. Maybe they've gone through a major M&A deal that has been announced. Like how can we help with that? Maybe there's like some aspect of that that would trigger the thought to say, I'm going to reach out, or the exercise of going through your contacts and understanding like where you think those viable leads could be. So I thought I would just level set there. But in terms of, reaching out to my personal network, I think for me, it's been reputation. Those that know me, they know that I have, tried to do the best job that I can for my clients. They know that I have integrity. They know I'm knowledgeable. They know I can talk about, what about healthcare. And so I do get people coming to me, asking me questions about it just because of that reputation that I have out in the marketplace or within my personal circles. So I'm happy to talk to it. And if I find the conversation can meander there, then I'm not afraid. And I think to your point, picking up the phone is those individuals know that if I'm picking up a phone, I'm doing it with the best intentions. Yes. So I think reputation really has a lot to do with your prospecting.
Yeah, I agree with everything you're saying. The analogy, I don't know if it works for anyone else, but Aesop's fable, the goose that laid the golden egg, is my go-to metaphor for this or analogy for this whole referral topic. And, people think that's just a children's book and everything. That gentleman is like 800 BC. Like those fables have lasted a long time because they strike a nerve and they must be true in human life. And that fable is about, wow, I've got this goose that's laying golden eggs and it's so wonderful. And so you take them, and that's the normal happenstance referral. Like, wow, they said nice things about me. And they introduced me to someone I didn't even ask. Those are golden eggs. Those are wonderful things. And the people that say, like that fable described, the people that get greedy and say, I wish those would come a little faster, and I wish I could get them faster. And they actually try to go get them in the goose and kill the goose. It all ends there. So reputation, as you say, is key. It has to be done with value, as Ryan, you stated, and progress, improvement. And in the discussion, I think that you're highlighting in the beginning of your comment, where if you haven't prepared, don't have this conversation. You have two conversations here. You have a conversation with a reference, whether it's a friend or a colleague, doesn't matter. And if it is a referral that you're targeting, that you'd like to get to know, that first meeting cannot be a sales meeting. It has to be an information fact-finding meeting. And so you're not trying to get something that you didn't promise. You're not trying to hurt a relationship. You're just trying to network. You're just
Yeah,
trying
and to state the obvious, it's asking. Because if you don't put it out there, then you're not going to get it back at you. So, and I think that while it feels, some people might feel like it's really awkward that you're imposing on individuals, but at the end of the day, I think people really like making connections for other people, and they like to be helpful. And again, if you have that reputation to back you up, like they'd be thrilled to introduce you to their friend or colleague or whoever. But you do have to open your mouth and you do have to float it out there and put it on the table.
Oh, that is such an important point. One of the 12 most essential needs we have as human beings is to connect and to feel expert. And when you combine those, you get what you just stated. Like you're not, if you've done this well, you've prepared before you opened your mouth to the reference or the referral, then you have a right to connect and you give the other person that opportunity. They also have the need every day to connect with other human beings in an emotional, positive way and to feel expert, to feel smart, to feel valuable. And when you offer someone and you tee it up and you say, do you know someone? We all been there. Like, oh, yeah, I know them and I know them. Everyone wants to say, oh, yeah, I know them and we're good friends and I knew them better. People have that need. And they also have the need to say, oh, yeah, I know a little bit about that too. I know a little bit about them. And so it's not a burden if we just handle it and approach it right. Does that make sense, Ryan? What are your thoughts?
It really does. No, it absolutely does. I love the thoughts around the goose that lays the golden egg. And we have to be so careful with that network. We really do, and foster it and strengthen it. And we strengthen it by constantly providing value to it, right? Looking for opportunities to help people in our network proactively. One thing that I love to do is to connect people that I think could gain something from each other, from that relationship. And I've had a number of opportunities over the years to just grab a couple people from my network that don't know each other and go to lunch together with them or make that connection virtually. And that builds strength into that network, right? They start to see me as someone who can provide some value to them and can help to strengthen their own. And you're totally right about that need to make connections. It's a human need, like you said. And one of the things that I love about asking for referrals is, one, it gives me an excuse to make that connection. And oftentimes I'll even say that, as I'm calling them, I've been doing this. And one of the things that I love about it is it gives me an excuse to talk to you. We haven't talked for a while. And I love that. And when I'm asking for that referral, hey, this gives you an excuse to reach out to this old colleague or this old friend or whatever. They don't have to be just reaching out of the blue. They've got an excuse because I'm asking them to make that, to reconnect with them. And so I love that idea of the importance of connections. And it really is just about that. And we can all, gain a lot just from that aspect of it personally.
Yeah, it connects a practical thing. You've given a great description of something that's super practical. It gets right down to the essence of everything we're talking about. I too, like other business people, have work to do and I have a task to do. And they are always louder than reaching out to another human being, always. Because reaching out to another human being or walking to the other office or having that meeting always requires a little emotional preparation and literal preparation. And so it's very easy to just look at my task list and say, I need to write an email and hit send. But what I found that is, I think, really magical silver bullet, so to speak, is I don't any longer say I should reach out to 10 people. Or I should reach out to 20 people, or I've got those 10 and those 5. I before I go home and leave the office, I require myself to find the one ideal person. In the sales world, it's the ideal prospect. In a business, it's the one person that if you could actually have a conversation with them, would loosen results and solutions in something key, your top priority you're working on. There's always one person that you could think about for 5 minutes or 10 minutes during the end of the day and say, who is the one person? And then that one person, you're going to find a connection. In today's world, it used to be 6 degrees of separation, the old Kevin Bacon rule. Social media and sociologists have proven that we're actually only 2 steps away, 3 degrees to anyone in a professional life. So we can find some connection. We want to go not to the common connections on LinkedIn because we don't even know half of those people and they don't know half of theirs. The key is really to go below the screen and go to the people in the activity that have made comments and liked their posts. Or if there's none of that available, people they've given a recommendation or that have volunteered a recommendation to them, to look at all of the various things of activity below the first screen and find people that fit the description of your ideal person to contact and load it. Before you quit working that night before, you load one. Because just like you said, Ryan, you said it so well. It described the feeling that I have. If I have 3 teed up, 10 teed up, 20 teed up, but I don't think I have to do them and I just have the one ready and make the call and I feel what you just said. I'm like, oh, it's so great to reconnect. I just went to lunch yesterday with Charles Van Alsdale, a friend of mine that I worked with 10 years ago. I loved it. We had a blast. We learned about everything. It was so invigorating. And yes, I got a referral out of him, but it was just so thrilling to meet Charles again and be with them. And then he gets to do the same with that referral. It's like, it's a gift you're giving. I loved how you said that. We're about ready to close up. So I just want to make sure that we cover one more topic, and that is how to approach the actual potential referral. We've asked our friends and what is some of the language? We talked about that we have to give value and we have to do all these preparation things. Like, let's talk about a voicemail we're going to leave because that's the most likely thing. And then we're going to kind of edit it short for a follow-up email to that actual final referral person. But what are some of the things? Let's just be loose and play with language here for a second. And what do you say on the voicemail to someone? Are you brave, Lisa? You want to kick us off on that attempt?
I feel like Ryan should go first on this.
Okay, Ryan, you go first. And I'm glad to go first. I'll go first. I'm putting you both on the spot. I think if I know a question I want to ask that's a really smart question, then first relates to their job, then to something I do. It has no intention of selling, but learning. I think there's two easy excuses that I can give anyone that are legitimate and super important to me. One is that I believe in sharpening the saw, and I believe in being an expert. It's what I try to do professionally. And I think every person that gets a paycheck should be an expert at something and think of themselves as an expert at something. And so when you position yourself to a friend at a baseball game or someone that's in line at a movie that you happen to know from 10 years ago, yes, I'm an expert in X, whatever it is. Then they understand the next sentence. And I have a strong value in sharpening my saw. And I don't know if you remember that from Stephen Covey, but that means that I constantly research and ask smart questions about. And I have an urgent one that's really important and might relate to you. And it's this question about why. And I think that is so legitimate and easy. I just leave that voicemail. Joe said that you'd spend 5 minutes possibly with me on the phone. And of course, that 5 turns into 15 with permission. But if they want to go 30, I'll go 30, but I won't take longer than that. And that's not very long. Outlook's defaulting to 1 hour meetings, so I beat that. So that's kind of my voicemail approach for those really safe, can do it with anyone. What are your thoughts on that? Or what might you say, Ryan? Give us your best shot at voicemail.
I love that. I love the idea of, we can call it an intellectual curiosity, right? Maintaining that curiosity throughout your career and always trying to learn more. And the other thing that I love about it is it acknowledges and kind of builds up and helps, the other party to know that they bring value to this conversation. You're hoping to get something from them and know that they can bring something of value to that conversation. So I think that's just great. The other thing that comes to mind as I think of making those approaches is, they talk about anytime we're leaving a voicemail or sending an email, the 3 seconds of attention that we have before something is deleted, right? And so I think leading with that curiosity is really important because it's disarming. I want to learn more about you, about your business, about this within your business or whatever it might be. I think the other thing we should bring up very early in that voicemail or email or whatever it is that connection. that individual that's referred us to them. There's that magic in that name, right? That's after all the reason why we've got that name. And so using that very early on before they hit this delete button is going to be really, really important as well.
Yeah, Joe said you were approachable. Don't prove him wrong. What are your thoughts, Lisa?
I was just going to say picking up the phone just in general, because I know that there are different communication channels for various generations. And so like I'm always telling my junior staff, pick up the phone, call that person, stop sending emails. So I think just to even call out that talking to a person or a voicemail and just hearing that voice is so impactful. Although on the flip side, you should really understand who your buyer is. Right? Because again, those generational communication needs. But answering your question very specifically is I always come back to tone. I think what Ryan said, what you said, all on point. I don't think I have any more to add to that. I would just say one of the learnings that I've had was when I went to go buy a car and they're trying to put on all these add-on sales at the very end of the deal. And I thought I was done. And then the conversation got really heightened and I felt everyone's stress. And then the sales manager just comes in and has this very calming, voice that's like, what's the problem? Go ahead and just take the car. Call us tomorrow morning by 9. Think about it. Like he just de-escalated it so much more. And for me, I walked away with, our tone really impacts how we talk to people. And so I think if you're picking up the phone and you're sounding like you're trying to get through your 10 beats for that day or whatever the case is, or that you're trying to make a sale because you're desperate, like all of that coming back to Ryan's emotions will come through in our voice. And so I think really just making sure that you're feeling calm and confident and just having that tone, I think really makes a difference.
Yeah. Before we quit, I've got to say that's a brilliant insight. Besides the calming, another important tone is casual. If it's casual and it's verbose, it's a problem. But if it's casual and it's succinct and prepared, then it just eases and it creates that calmness too. Hey, don't you know Jeff? I was at work the other day and I thought I saw you knew Jeff. And I need to ask someone just like Jeff a question about work and a project I'm working on. Is he approachable? I mean, just being very casual about it, not making a big deal or nervous or businessy. It calms. I've had to do this. I do it for my podcast, not just my selling. I have to start a relationship. And you are one of the principals in the San Francisco office of Mercer, which is not a small market. Rob Plowgian, director at NetCuras, who crafts both the channel strategy and has had tremendous success there. And also your approach to managed services. How are you doing?
Doing great.
Great. It's great to see you again. Talk a little bit about your initiative to creatively create a channel. So I know that you've used a lot of your own network to reach out to friends and colleagues from the past, but in some of the cases, maybe you weren't as close to them or you hadn't seen them for a long time or such. Tell me how you get someone like a VAR or some other type of reseller or consultant, how you talk to them and have them continue to build their business without losing some of those sales because you're operating everything, and how you talk to them and get them to engage in customers and bring them to you.
Yeah. So to your point, the channel strategy for us has been instrumental in our growth. And the reason that we wanted to focus there is because if you think about, we have 2 salespeople, my boss and myself in our organization, everybody else is an engineer. And so if we want to scale, we either have to hire additional salespeople or we can go and work with the channel. And the channel is a network of individuals who already have existing customers and they're in this space. And so the facility that we have to go into an organization with a channel partner versus myself, we have a much higher success rate of finding opportunities and qualified opportunities going through the channel. When I speak with organizations about working with us specifically, the benefit to the channel partners is we do most of the heavy lifting. So they don't really have to do a whole lot other than make the introductions. And then once we make the introduction, then we run with it. Then they are able to they're still involved, and they obviously have the relationships, but we do a lot of good things for them. So we'll work with the organization. We'll bring these customers on board, and then the channel partner obviously takes a little bit of like a referral fee or whatever. And it works out real well for them in a couple of ways. First, they can make a little bit of money on the engagement, but more importantly, it provides in the VAR world or in that channel world, it's very transactional. And because they're out selling a thing, so it makes it very commoditized. So they could go, these customers go to any VAR to buy whatever they have. It's like, well, whoever's going to give it to me for the lowest price, I'll just buy it from them. This way, we're engaged and we are hip deep in the IT operations. And so we understand everything from a strategic perspective. And so what that does for the VAR is they now have credibility and they're adding additional value to this organization that they weren't able to provide before. And now we're instrumental in the success of these organizations. And so we may cannibalize a little bit of the PS work. Sometimes the benefits that they get out of that far outweigh, whatever, a few dollars they would make on PS.
Well, and would it be true, even transactionally in their own business, that if the computing needs are what they were at the old company, roughly, but you're managing something similar, and then it frees up the projects to happen and some of the more of the development to happen, then they might need routers faster. And if they need routers, that VAR that you and they have been using is likely going to be a front runner in getting the router. So the more work, the more computing, the more ability, the more the VAR is going to sell to someone if you let them be engaged and they have a deal with you. Is that true?
That's absolutely true. And they'll know about the projects that are coming up. They will be involved in what's going on, and they can be at the front end of that to, again, provide additional value and be ahead of that curve versus being reactionary. They can be driving and helping add value on the front end versus trying to, provide the lowest price for a widget on the back end.
I wonder if you look at an IT operations, give me the top 3 to 5 constraints, the problems, the issues that operations runs into.
Sure. And I think it's fairly consistent across the board in organizations. IT operations departments struggle with a number of things, but one specifically today, finding and retaining talent is a challenge. And the reason for that is because with the pandemic, it drove a lot of work from home sort of behavior. And what that did is it eliminated the competition locally for resources and opened up your company to resources in the entire US or globe. And so there's companies with whom we work that have people that are leaving to go work for Facebook or Amazon or whomever. And so you're not only competing for the resources that are local with another company down the street, but now it's global. And so that's been a big challenge, finding and retaining talent and then being able to afford the talent that you need, because there's certain skill sets that you need. And now people can make a lot more money
because they're needed so much, the supply and demand, right? Is that going on in most states, do you suspect?
Yeah, we see that all across the board. We have a client that we're working with right now that has had an open requisition for a senior network engineer for the last 6 months and have been able to fill it. And they've had a number of candidates. It's been interesting, the number of candidates they receive. There's a lot of more junior individuals that are now throwing their hat into the ring and expecting senior level comp because nobody else is available to take those jobs. So that's I would say a big issue that IT operations organizations are facing right now. If hiring and
let me ask you before you move off of that, let me ask you one other thing about that. So I know that that's true across the board in technology for development and operational related and network operated positions. But do you see a pattern in what that causes first? Like what part of the IT operations is starting to struggle because the talent runs away first? Is there a pattern at all? Is there a particular part of it that's problematic and getting stuck?
That's a good question. I know that so there's this concept of DevOps right now. So individuals that are proficient on systems administration. So it kind of blends it. They bridge that gap between development and operations. Those are the individuals that are typically consumed the fastest and have the most job opportunities. The challenge with that is those guys are typically the ones that know the most about the infrastructure. So they'll know about the systems, how it all interoperates and how the applications behave. And what they need to do to support that. So those guys I see getting pulled away quicker. But I think it's across the board though, Mark. There's a need for every role in an IT operations department, network engineers, even down to the help desk. There's just a lot of demand right now.
What are the hot positions right now? Database administrators and network experts, and what are some of the hottest positions in operations?
So what we're seeing, senior level engineers that know telephony and route and switch, the network engineering position is always something that an organization is going to need. I see a lot of Linux administration. That's kind of a hot position right now. I would say the market is right now reeling from a spate of ransomware attacks. So security is probably the hottest position that you can have in IT operations. So IT security is a giant gap for a lot of organizations. So they're investing heavily there to find those resources.
So I interrupted you. You were heading to talk about what those things cause and such. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, so if organizations find that they're set from a staffing perspective, some of the other challenges that they run into, about statistically 80% of an IT operations time is spent keeping the lights on. So they're making sure that the applications and the infrastructure is just running. And so they only have about 20% of their time to spend on innovation. And the problem is there's so much being put onto the teams from projects. A lot of times they end up burning out because they are spending all their daytime just keeping the lights on, and then they don't have time to get to the projects. And so they have to work, around the clock. So we find burnout is pretty prevalent, and being able to just get to the projects that the business wants to handle.
So some of the DevOps that's happening is a function of people being forced into becoming that animal. It's almost the case. We've just got to keep it. I wanted to innovate. I wanted to do work on that, but I might just need to keep the lights on because there's no one else.
Yeah, and that's where an organization like ours can come in and help. So we'll provide augmentation to the team, and we can offload all of that operational, the tasks that require being up at 2 a.m. to upgrade servers or to roll out whatever patches need to be applied. All that type of work that needs to be done after hours, we can take off of an organization, and then their teams are now freed up to work on the projects. And conversely, if their team really loves the operational work, then we could take over the project work and help accelerate that. We have a company that had 12 projects in their backlog that hadn't moved in 2 years when they brought us on, and we just focused on projects and knocked out all 12 in 6 months. So we can provide scale and support to an existing organization.
They want to keep doing the other operations, huh? Interesting. So tell me, if you see an operation or a piece of their world that requires that side in the network, what are the process steps that you take in moving someone from scrambling to get talent, keeping things up on their own, over to your facilities and people?
So our methodology is, and this is some of our secret sauce, I guess I would say, but we go in and we do an assessment first. And so that's the first thing that we do. We'll go in and we will look at everything in their environment, and we'll put together a comprehensive report of all the areas we find that could potentially be improved and to reduce friction in the organization. And then we would put together a remediation strategy, and we would work with that team to implement whatever is the most important. And what that does is it stabilizes the environment. A lot of organizations, again, because they have limited cycles, some of the work that needs to be done to make the environment stable is just not. They don't have time to get to it. And so they keep sticking Band-Aids on things, putting their fingers in the holes of the dam, to keep that water from running out. And they do a pretty good job of doing that, but it's just a series of playing whack-a-mole. And so what we want to do is we want to eliminate all all those issues, get rid of the gremlins, and stabilize the environment, and then work on optimization. And we've been really successful doing that.
All right. Well, your hard stop is here, and I'm grateful. You have a great reputation for working very humanely and fairly, and people enjoy working with you, and that's what I've been experiencing too. So I appreciate you taking the time, and we'll keep that next appointment and dive in a little more.
I love it.
I'm so honored that you'd be with me, Lisa. And Ryan, I know what a top performer you are, and I'm thrilled that you'd be willing to spend a little time with me. Thank you both for helping me unpack this topic today.
Anytime, Mark. Thank you.
Mark, thank you.
Great. Thank you for joining us to get leaders unstuck and thriving with their teams. You've heard a little bit about the power of bold encounters and leadership. Watch on. Go to full episodes with the iconic expert interviews at markspencercook.com/podcast. And please subscribe. My site takes you directly to YouTube video and podcast versions. Please make comments. Share this with your friends. Also, reach out to us to just brainstorm your priorities, challenges, events, or how bold encounters might help. Visit windfallpartners.com. Click the Let's Talk button without obligation and reach out. I look forward to speaking. Thank you for joining us. Now, let's lead with bold encounters today.